My name is Asia. I am an intuitive reader and guide. I'm really here to assist people in establishing a deep level of trust with themselves and reconnect to their intuition through all of the work that I do, ultimately wanting everybody to be living the most authentic and aligned feeling lives possible, and recognizing that the power really is within each and every one of us to make our own best decisions.
Beautiful. Well, like I said right before we got started, we are so excited to have you on. We have been following you as our own intuitive reader on TikTok, where we found your work for months. So we're so excited to be talking with you about how to live an authentic life, how to keep finding your true north when you're going through life's biggest transitions and ups
Mhm.
and downs. Because we kind of feel like we're about to start that journey for ourselves right now, slash, we've been on those journeys recently.
Yeah.
and we could always use the guidance. So maybe let's begin with, what does it mean to live an authentic life?
Great question. Also, just wanted to thank you again for having me. I think living an authentic life truly means consulting yourself first, going within and discovering what actually feels correct or what feels good to you, and following that. And I think that authenticity is more than anything kind of a process of unbecoming who we are not, rather than becoming who we are. Maybe those are simultaneously happening, but we come to this planet authentic, right? And in a perfect world, we would have that fostered, we would have a support system, and that just doesn't tend to be the case for a lot of us due to family of origin, society, whatever. So we kind of get further and further away from that and wake up one day going, oh my God, like, what is this life? This doesn't feel right. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the courage and the willingness to begin to, again, go inward. I'll probably say that a million times throughout this, and start peeling back the layers of who we are not so that we can find alignment with who we actually are.
Ugh, everything you say just hits me right in the soul, right in the heart. I remember the first time I saw one of your TikToks, I was like, oh God, like she gets it. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So it's so exciting to have you here today. You mentioned self trust, and that
yeah,
sounds really important when it comes to what your definition of living an authentic life is. How do
totally.
we start to build that? Because I feel like we live in a society that teaches us how not to trust ourselves. So, like, don't trust when you're hungry because you
Oh
need
my
to
God, I
be a
was just gonna
certain
say.
size. Don't
Mm-hmm.
trust
God.
when somebody hurts your feelings because you need to just let it go and be a cool girl, whatever it is. Like,
Right.
don't trust all these parts of yourself for years and years and years. It's like, how are we supposed to reestablish that trust?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. And I think one of the best places to start is by keeping your word to yourself first and foremost. And it doesn't have to be on these massive things, at least not right away, because I think that when we do that, we can kind of set ourselves up for failure a little bit. It's kind of like when you are like, okay, I'm going to start that diet on Monday and I'm going to not eat any sugar or have any treats and I'm going to eat clean and get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? It's not really sustainable to flip your whole life on its head overnight. I'm not saying it's impossible, but in order, again, to foster this self trust in a way that feels sustainable, just keeping little promises to yourself. I do want to start getting up earlier, so let me focus on getting up 15 minutes earlier than I usually do and start there. And, I want to start a morning routine. So let me pick one new thing to do instead of overhauling everything and then being disappointed with myself when I don't stay consistent with that. And for a lot of people, or I guess I can only ever genuinely speak for myself, but what I tend to find is that then when we do make a big promise to ourselves and then we don't keep it, it reinforces the story that we have about ourselves. Oh, see, I can't be trusted. I never follow through with what I say I'm going to do. And then it just becomes like this big, never ending spiral of breaking trust with yourself and then feeling like you can't trust yourself.
That is such a a reinforcing circle.
Yeah.
And I find that like one of the hardest or one of the hurdles in trying to navigate and sort through like what does and doesn't feel authentic. So it's like, okay, maybe this doesn't feel authentic for me anymore. So I want to get rid of it. And maybe it's a habit that I've always had. But then I find myself back in this habit that doesn't really fit, but it comes so naturally to me. And it's like, see, there I go again, not being able to do anything, just a big old dum dum.
Yeah, and that's where grace and self-compassion are also super important. And it's been a huge work in progress for me, but something that I say really often in my readings and to my clients is that you're never going to beat yourself up into feeling better or doing better or being better. Like shame just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I do also have to say, I think there's kind of this fine line between giving yourself grace and compassion and then like coddling yourself or giving yourself a cop out. And that requires a level of self-awareness, right? Like, am I really, doing my best to show up in the way that feels like supportive of who I want to be, or am I letting myself off the hook? But for the most part, I would say that I find people tend to be much harder on themselves than coddling. So being like, hey, I didn't become who I am overnight. How can I expect myself to unbecome this person overnight? It's just not going to happen.
When we do have those moments where we mess up and we're not living in alignment with where we want to be, do you have any little like quotes that we can tell ourselves over and over again to comfort ourselves in those moments?
Yeah, this is very telling of just like my experience with myself, but something I have to always say is like, okay, Asia, you're not a bad person because you made a mistake, or you're not a failure because you didn't follow through with this thing this one time. And again, it's really been a lot of learning how to be so much more tender and soft with myself. And I think that kind of experimenting with the things that you say, because it has to feel right for you, right? And I definitely can offer things, but kind of finding that thing that doesn't feel like total. Can I swear?
Yes, please.
Okay, I figured as much, but I'm like, sometimes I'm real sweary. So like, that thing that doesn't feel like total bullshit, because sometimes it does. And then I just don't think that's very helpful either. A new thing that I've been working with is, okay, I'm new here. Like, it's my first time on earth. You know what I mean? Like, it's super funny. I'm about to be 38 years old at the end of the month. And I'm like, hey, I'm new. It really helps,
I just started working here, actually.
Yeah. I'm barely clocked in. Like, let me figure it out. And it's like, humor is something that really helps me. And so like being a little silly about it, being like, man, it's okay. It's just like not that serious. You can try again tomorrow. You can try again, not even waiting for the next day. Like every moment is an opportunity. It's a clean slate if we allow it to be, and we don't dwell in the past of, oh my God, I fucked up. I didn't do this right. Ugh, again, see, you big dumb, like you said, like that. When that rhetoric, like when that voice gets going, it's really hard to slow down the momentum. So kind of, stopping it in its tracks with something that feels more supportive is actually really helpful.
Yeah. Your advice that I have heard you say now, and also that I've listened to in your TikToks, it's like a lot of the self-compassion and being able to slow down for a half a second to be like, it's okay in this moment, and like, actually, wait, I can say a nice thing to myself right now and like provide space for like a learning opportunity rather than beating myself up. But I almost feel like at least for me personally, in trying to lead a more authentic life, I always feel like I'm playing catch up. Like the next thing I learn about myself, I'm late to learning it. Like I can't believe I'm just now figuring out that this fits better than the thing before. And now I'm so far fucking behind than that next person. And like, how am I just now seeing this? So it's also hard to feel like you're running against time, but that's also another critique of yourself and not giving yourself compassion. It's like builds and builds and builds for me.
For sure. Something I also say really frequently is you simply can't be late for your own life. You're right on time. Your life is not moving at the pace of anybody else's life, and it's not supposed to. And I get how hard that is, like knowing that like logically, and then like really feeling that to be true aren't always the same thing. And it's so easy with social media to be looking around at what everybody else is doing, and like, oh my god, everybody else has so much more figured out than I do. And like you said, I'm so late. But like, I really have had to start leaning into, I'm figuring things out when I'm supposed to. I'm getting the insights when I'm meant to have them. Maybe you weren't ready to know what you know about yourself beforehand. Like, I do think that every chapter of our life is integral to our story, even the chapters that aren't super fun. And when we're going through those experiences where you're like, holy shit, like, is this really necessary? It is. I sincerely think it is. It adds character. It's all a part. It's all a part of the story. But like, and I'll probably say it so many more times. But again, even being able to look back at that old version of yourself and have so much compassion for them. Like, I used to be so down on 20-something Asia because she really just kind of put up with a lot of bullshit. And then I go, wow, thanks. You did all of that hard work, so I didn't have to. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have gotten to be me. So thank you so much, because you were the most important stepping stone to being where I am now and who I am now. And like, have so much love for her,
Yeah.
I love loving the parts of ourselves that we normally wouldn't, or that we're maybe
Yes.
taught not to love. It just feels so much better to love something than to try and hate it away, which is something that we've been talking about recently.
For sure. And acceptance is also a really great place to start, because I think going from hatred or loathing to loving and embracing those parts of ourselves that, are really hard to integrate, like, acceptance is still a step in the right direction. And really undervalued, I think, because we get a lot of this like, oh my god, just love yourself. And it's like, oh man, I never thought of that. Thanks for that wise nugget.
I'll write
you know
that
what I mean?
one down.
Yeah,
That's
like,
it.
wow,
That's
you're
what I've
a
been missing.
genius. I would,
Yeah.
but yeah, just being like, what if there's this part of me and it doesn't have to mean all of these stories I've been telling myself? Like, what if it just is? I've also, I've been really, really playing with and working with, like, what if nothing is good or bad? It just is, and neutralizing it. And that can be really helpful, I think, for those of us who are dichotomous, very like black or white kind of thinkers.
Absolutely.
Yes. I feel that with my own actions. And I know you have a question, Cass, so I'll let you go to that one.
If you have something on that, you can.
No, I was just going to say that's how I feel with everything in life. I like, this has to mean something. It has to be for something to push forward, because I talk about it in therapy a lot. I have this like productive, everything has to be productive and for a purpose mindset. So yeah, it's like that thought process of like, I need this to mean something. This hiccup has to mean something. This setback has to mean something.
Yeah.
And so I want to break out of that. That would be cool.
Just takes practice. Yeah.
Something that one of my teachers and favorite people in the world, who we've had on the podcast, Ani Ferlisi, says is that when you're having a really hard time, it's not a time to make meaning. It's a time to figure out what matters. And I really love that. That feels really comforting to me.
That's so beautiful. I definitely would be adopting that into my own vocabulary. Such a beautiful way to look at things. And I talk about that a lot when we're in the midst of a big life lesson or something that feels really uncomfortable. I tell my clients the same thing. I'm like, this isn't the time where you have to look for the silver lining or figure out what's going on. You get to just be in your experience. Frankly, it's so hard to find the lesson in the moment anyway, right? Like, it's hard to see the forest through the trees. It's usually when you're out of it and on the other side of things that you have the opportunity to look back and go, was that my favorite experience I've ever had in life? Like, maybe not, but I get it. Like, I see how that set me on this trajectory, or why maybe that needed to happen, or what I learned. But really learning how to be in your experience and actually feel your feelings, and not always intellectualizing them and things like that, is the most helpful thing you can do, I think.
In feeling your feelings, I also feel like that relates to feeling your intuition and believing your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so maybe we can start with defining what is our intuition, because sometimes I don't know if what I'm feeling is intuition or if I'm just hungry. I don't, it's
Yeah.
like, what is our intuition?
For sure. A way that I often describe intuition is like it's this innate GPS that exists within your body that's always giving you information about where to go next or what to do next, kind of pinging you, okay, go left, do this, call this person. And it really requires a balance of going inward and tuning out the world around us to be able to actually tune into what it's telling us, you know?
Mhm.
And I think one of the most challenging things about intuition is that it rarely, if ever, feels very logical. And so many of us have been raised to be logical, to make the smart choice, to use your brain. And at this point in my life, I think it's really silly, kind of. Maybe that's a hot take that we trust anything that happens in our minds just because our brains are so full of limiting beliefs and conditioning and things that come from outside of ourselves. And then our bodies, which is where I believe intuition lies, has this really clear information, right? Like we can go into a room and be like, whoa, I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here. Or I just don't feel like I can trust this person, or I don't know why, but I really feel like I want to go here. And because we can't rationalize it or make sense of it, a lot of the times we don't act on it. And then I don't know about y'all, but anytime I have gone against my intuitive feeling, I've always been like, well, that sucked. Like, I wish I would have listened to myself or that feeling that I was getting, and honored that. I feel like it would have turned out better.
Mhm.
I feel like sometimes when I'm trying to listen to my intuition, tune into what my body's telling me, I end up flipping back and forth between two things, I guess.
Mm,
And I don't know, it's hard for me to know which one my intuition is telling me because I think a lot of anxiety is also involved in not wanting
yeah,
to make the wrong decision, which I feel like is probably pretty common and that a lot of us
totally.
don't want to make the wrong decision and are terrified of making the wrong decision. So how do we kind of decipher what is the intuition versus those limiting beliefs or something that somebody has told us that isn't true for us?
Yeah. Um, I think that intuition tends to be a pretty steady and fairly calm sense of knowing, even when it's stuff that we don't like, even if it's like, ooh, this person's really cute, but they have red flags all over the place. Like, it's not a good idea to proceed. Whereas anxiety is kind of a bully and it's telling you all of the worst case scenarios and all of the bad things that are going to happen. And it's also tends to be looping. So I feel like I've been able to decipher for myself between intuition and anxiety, because that's definitely something that I've experienced a lot in my life by like what keeps happening on a loop over and over and over again. That's usually anxiety or it's fear, and not instinctual primal fear that is necessary that we have. Again, that like, ooh, this doesn't feel safe. That usually is a feeling within our bodies. But when it keeps going and going and telling you again the worst case scenario, and what if you fail, and what if everybody laughs at you, and what if you suck, and what if you lose your job and then you're homeless, that's like where my brain always goes.
Mhm.
Like that's usually anxiety and fear. And so learning to tune into, again, that calm sense of knowing that arises. And the thing is that can be challenging there is sometimes it's really subtle. I think intuition communicates with people in different ways. Some people hear it, some people feel it. So I think there's a lot of kind of experimentation that comes along with just being a human being too. Not everything that works for one person is going to work for another. And so listening, again, this is going back to being your own best authority, but like being open to hearing other people's experiences, but at the end of the day being willing to go, okay, well, what works best for me? Maybe sitting down in silent meditation is really, really helpful. Maybe breath work is helpful. Maybe journaling or free writing is helpful. I'm really big on something that helps me connect to my intuition is just going for a walk, being in nature, not being distracted. It's like all of the noise of the world around me gets turned down and my sense of intuition really gets cranked up and I can hear myself a lot more clearly.
Mhm. I love also thinking about this is one chapter towards the end of Untamed, Glennon Doyle's book,
Mm.
where she talks about knowing what's right for her and whether things feel hot or cold or warm or cold or something like that. And that
Yeah.
any decision that feels good is going to feel warm and like, right? Am I getting that right, Cass? Do you remember that
I
part?
don't remember.
Way to call you out. Sorry. I'm pretty sure that's what it's that type of a feeling where like she knows it's right because it does feel like warm or glowy. It's one of those two. And the other one doesn't and it feels colder or more distant. And so that's something I've been trying to be conscious of as well. Like when you're saying tuning into your own intuition, it's like I almost gaslight myself though to be like, no, the one that feels good is the easy way. And you would because you're lazy. And so I feel like these are obstacles. It's like learning to trust yourself or not. Another one for me is like kind of being scared of what your intuition might be telling you. So like being scared to turn towards something that might teach you something about yourself.
Definitely.
It's been hard to trust my intuition and therefore let myself learn to know it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely relate. One of the things I find the most challenging is staying consistent with the journaling practice. And I'm dead convinced it's because I just know that I'm going to unearth some shit that I don't like really want to sit with or face. And so it's like just when it starts getting good, I'm like, no more journaling for me, thanks. Like I'm like, let me cut this off before it gets too deep. But again, self-awareness, you already have the self-awareness of like, I think I know what's happening here. And so again, it's just practice. So much of life, I just have been referring to like life in and of itself is a practice and stretching yourself just like one little baby, little pinky toe towards, doing something different or outside of your comfort zone, because ultimately so much of what we do is to keep ourselves feeling safe and comfortable. Like that's what our brain is trying to do all of the times. Keeping us where it feels comfortable, familiar, and safe. And this is why, like, when we consciously want to change and we start moving towards that change, your brain starts telling you all the spookiest shit that makes you like want to hightail it back to, okay, well, I don't really like it here, but it's safe. It's better the devil you know than the devil you don't, right? But I think that when we do that long enough, this is where the universe or whatever language feels supportive for you, source, God, whatever, starts going, okay, I've been sending information to your like little radar inside of you and you are just not listening. So let me flip the whole fucking table. And then you won't have any choice but to pay attention. And so it's kind of like you can decide to be proactive, right? And like listening to yourself and moving towards the changes, or the universe is going to push you off a cliff. And frankly, sometimes I've needed that to happen. Like sometimes one of my closest friends and I were just talking about that. Like, man, sometimes I really do just need the universe to step in and do it for me, because it doesn't feel great, but it's like, I don't have any time to be like, hey, I'm scared. I just have to like figure it out,
I love a push.
Yeah.
I love a shove. Make
Sometimes
me trip,
you need
make
them.
me fall. Yeah.
And then hilariously, of course, we're always like, oh my God, like, oh, my whole life is falling apart now. Even though we were just like, I don't like this shit. Like, I don't want any of this. And then universe is like, cool, well, let's like just get rid of all of it. You're going to get fired from that job and that person's going to break up with you. And then we're like snotting, crying in the corner, not recognizing it's actually totally like this clean slate and this opportunity to start again. But again, we can't see the lesson in the moment, right? So like, it's all part of the experience.
In terms of tools to help us get in touch with our intuition, can you talk a little bit about how we could get started using tarot or oracle cards?
Oh my God, absolutely. I think that reading for yourself is such a beautiful way to start connecting more deeply to your intuition. So honestly, grab a deck that you feel connected to. I know that some people think that they have to be gifted one. I think that's kind of like a superstition that exists within the world, and it's totally fine if that's something you believe in. I have bought most of my own decks. So like, if you can shop online or I do feel like if you can get to a store where you can be in the presence of a deck and really like feel its energy or like feel which one is calling to you, that could be really, really helpful. But snag a deck that feels fun, feels good, take it home, cleanse it. I like to just light a little bit of incense and kind of, pass the cards over it, cleanse it, and start connecting my own energy to it. Shuffle up, pick a card. And like, I always recommend the first card, don't look at the guidebook yet because I love a guidebook. Obviously, they're really helpful, but I think it's easy to lean on those. And that's just another way we're not honoring our own intuition. Like, just because what you feel about the card comes up might differ from what comes up in the guidebook doesn't mean you're wrong, doesn't mean they're wrong either, but your intuition is just telling you what your intuition is telling you. So like, don't be discouraged if you're like, okay, well, I'm feeling like this about it, and you're like, well, that is not what came up in the guidebook, right? Like, it's a great opportunity to practice all that self-compassion, that self-trust, tuning into your intuition. And then, yeah, take a look at the guidebook, pull a card for yourself each day. Don't overwhelm yourself. You don't have to learn it all overnight, but it's a great tool, again, for connecting to yourself more deeply.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that I have a deck that also lists out like different ways to pull cards? Do you feel like that is important to get connected with like different ways to pull cards, or is it more just like how authentically it comes up for you?
I don't think at first adhering to any particular spread feels terribly necessary. It's great when you maybe deepen into your practice and you want to start expanding the way you work with the deck. But card a day or just intuitive pulling, even just shuffling the deck, like when feels good to stop. That's an intuitive thing, because people will be like, how many times should I shuffle? And I'm like, well, how many times does it feel right for you to shuffle? Like, when does it feel good to stop? And when you're splitting the deck, like really just taking a moment to go, how do I feel like I want to put this back together? And like, again, feeling into it. I feel like that's the most woo-woo shit to say, but really, truly feeling into like what feels right. And I think this is, in terms of authenticity, ultimately, it's so much a question of what feels correct instead of what do I think is correct. Because again, our heads are so full of everything, just noise that we're picking up from everyone and everything around us. So I'm in this place in my life where, and it's exhausting sometimes, where I'm like, do I really think that's true? Or am I just supposed to think that I think that's true? Like, it's just like bonkers town, So that's where it's like dropping out of my head, which is already, I'm such an overthinker. I can be such an overthinker. I always jokingly say like, my thoughts have thoughts. So the more I can drop out of this space and into the body, the better off I'm going to be. And again, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think that generally speaking, the more we can drop into the body and out of the monkey mind, the better off we're going to be.
I love that you said your thoughts have thoughts. I relate to that too.
Yeah, big time overthinker. And like from the moment I like open my eyeballs and wipe the crust out of my eyes in the morning, it's like, hello, we're picking up where we left off.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're here again. I'd love to talk to you about a few things.
Yes, we've been waiting for you to wake up.
We've been waiting for you. Yeah. Like a folder full of things.
Yes, yeah.
Something I'm wondering about that comes up for me a lot when I'm trying to make choices that feel authentic is, and perhaps this is a scotch of overthinking, is like, is this something I want or is this something that I think other people will like? So, we were talking about like a diet earlier, and it's like so much of that, I don't know, I feel like it gets to be this really complicated conversation of like, oh, I'm doing it for my health. I want to do this, but it's like, but are you? Like, am I really doing it for that? Or am I doing it because I want to look a certain way? And it's like how to like pick those things apart to really get to the root of like, yes, this actually feels good to me. And maybe that's, trying things on for size to see how they actually feel.
Yeah.
But it's so hard.
It is. But you know what? So is like listening to what everybody else has to say and being like, oh, they're right. No, they're right. No, they're right. I think I'm coming to this place where I'm like, a lot of life is about choosing your hard, right? And so I think that the work of learning how to reestablish or establish, if you feel you've never had trust with yourself, establish that trust with yourself. Start consulting yourself first, turning inward instead of constantly facing outward and asking everybody else's opinion, or simply even getting lost in the sea of information that is the internet and TikTok, which I love, but there's just so much fucking information and so many opinions, and it's so easy to feel like I should do that, I should do that, I should do that. And you said it. There's a lot of experimentation required, and this is why it's really upsetting to me sometimes to like see people being like, well, this is what I did and that's all you need to do, because we're all different. We all have such different needs, from our heart's desires to our bodies, what's going to work, how much sleep we need. All of that varies. And again, there has to be, it is hard and it can be frustrating because we live in what I call like an Amazon Prime society, right? Like we want everything tomorrow, if not sooner. And so we'll try something for a day or two and we're like, this isn't working. And we move on to the next thing. We're not giving anything time to work or time to like experiment and see, what do I like, what works for me. And that's the only way we're going to figure it out. You don't ever really know if you're going to like a thing or if a thing's actually for you until you try it, until you give it a little bit of time.
It's so scary trying things
know.
because it's like, oh, are people going to judge me? Is this going to be wrong for me? Am I going to look stupid? And I'm thinking about when I was like a tween or a teen and I had like, I call it my Disney goth phase.
Chic.
Yes. It's brought up in my family often. But it's like, I felt so fucking cool when I did it.
Yeah.
Was that authentically me? Not for my entire life, but it was very authentically me in that moment. And so it's like, why am I not giving myself the same permission to try things on, even if it's not going to be authentic for the rest of my life? It's okay if it feels authentic for 5 minutes. And then the 6th minute, I'm like, oh, fuck that. No, I need to take off the goth Tinkerbell shirt immediately.
I loved goth Tinkerbell shirts.
Yes. My goth Tinkerbell
With
messenger
my
bag. I think
Etnies.
about her daily. Yeah.
That's really cool.
I mean, I don't know a single person that hasn't been told that something about them is like too much or not enough or that's cringe or that's unlikable. And every experience we have like that makes it that much harder for us to show up in a way that we actually want to be showing up in, because it's the most primal, normal, natural thing to want to fit in and be liked. That's like lizard brain caveman shit, because if you got kicked out of your tribe, you would straight up die. And that's not the case anymore, but our brains haven't like evolved past that. So we still feel like that's going to happen. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't think it ever gets any less scary. I think we just have to learn how to be more brave. Like we just have to feel the fear and do the thing anyway. And something that I really sit with often is like, yes, it is scary to try. It's scary to think about getting made fun of. And I just also want to say, generally speaking, the people that are making fun of those who are trying are the people who are not doing shit themselves, right? It's always the people up in the stands watching the folks in the arena that are actually brave enough to show up and try to live their lives. And so everyone's a fucking critic. But the scariest thing of all to me is thinking about living a life that doesn't feel like the right fit and being on my deathbed and going, holy shit, what if I would have just tried? That's a weight that I do not want to carry with me to my grave. So maybe I'll look stupid, but maybe also not even maybe, the right people will think it's awesome. And most importantly, I'll think it's awesome. Like life is supposed to be fun. And I think about identity as not such a fixed thing as it feels like it is for so many of us. I talk about the gamification of life and like identity being like the choose your avatar or choose your player, which is the most fun part of any video game, in my opinion, right?
Absolutely.
So like actively choosing who we're being and playing that avatar for the day and going like, okay, well, maybe that didn't feel like a totally great fit, but that was fun. On to the next. It's not that serious, and keeping the elements that feel correct for us, discarding what doesn't, very much like when you come across a reading on the internet, take what resonates, leave the rest, right? And who knows, you might circle back to something and go, this feels right now. Cool. Love this sweater. I'll keep that. These pants aren't a great fit. I'll let that go. And just not being so serious about it. Like it's not that serious. Life is supposed to be fun. I know it feels like we just came here to pay bills and die, but that's not the case.
I love the permission to try things on and have
Yeah.
things not be that serious. And Cass, that question was like not words in my brain yet, but something that I always think about of like, how can it be authentic if this isn't who I'm going to be for the rest of my life? Like, what if it's only me for 2 months? And in that, I feel so silly at the end of it. And I'm like, oh my God, I just led everyone to believe that I love Gothic Tinkerbell. Now what? Now what? So, but I love that we leapt into that and it's just not that fucking serious. And
Yeah.
go try it on, put on. Cass has actually been a really good teacher for me in this in some ways, because I remember we were shopping once and I really wanted this really cool like see-through t-shirt. And I was like, oh, I wish I was a girl that could wear that shirt. And she's like, if you buy it, you will be. And I'm like, oh.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now I wear it as my going out tee because I only have 2. And it's like, oh yeah, you can be that bitch if you try. Like you can put things on, take it off as many times as you want, and it can still be authentic.
Totally. Yeah, you get to decide. And like you can undecide or you can change your mind. And that was like a huge revelation to me where I'm like, holy shit, I can change my mind. Like I don't have to pick this one thing forever and ever and ever for all of my days. Because frankly, that's very daunting, right?
Mhm.
And we're constantly growing and changing. Is it not like a little silly to think that we're ever going to be one particular way for our entire life? Like nothing in nature stays the same. Why would we? We are also a part of nature. And so, and again, it's not that it wasn't authentic. It maybe felt really correct then, but like then you've grown, you've changed, you've moved past that. It's all a part of your story though. They're all like little chapters within your book. And sometimes we have these big changes. That's like the beginning of a new book in the series of our life, right? But it's like all a part of who we are.
As always, the most beautiful summation that could even humanly exist. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, you good, Cass?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we couldn't talk to you and have you on without needing a reading from you, because this is everything that we've built our lives around. We're so excited. We would just love to do a collective reading for us and our honeys that listen, kind of like what we need to hear right now. So we would love to jump into a reading with you if we could.
Absolutely. I would love nothing more. I'm going to use this Journey Oracle deck because on the box for this deck, it says an Oracle deck to help you find your place in the universe. And what is life but that, right? Like just the process of trying to find and figure out where we fit in and what feels correct for us. So I'll go ahead and shuffle a few times and we'll dive in and we'll just see what needs to be said, what needs to be heard right now.
I'm waiting for your like TikTok spiel.
I know.
I know. I'm always like, I'm surprised I didn't just start saying it.
I know.
Honestly, I could say that in my sleep at this point.
Asia will never DM you for a reading.
Absolutely
Do not get scammed.
Please always check the username. Make sure that you're not being scammed. I can't help you if you are. Let's see. Let's go ahead and dive in. Oh, well, what a great way to start. So the first card we have is the present. The present,
Oh my God.
which this is where life is happening, you know, and all of the more reason again to drop back down and into the body and anchor ourselves in the present moment. You know, our minds again in our busy modern day life are usually cast out into the future, and we're future tripping and worrying about the never-ending, limitless what ifs that could happen, and generally all the scary ones, right? Like a lot of us are not going, oh my God, what if this is amazing? And what if this is the best chapter of my life? And what if I become a millionaire or whatever other things we want? We're like, what if this sucks? What if I'm terrible? What if everybody laughs at me? Right? What if this doesn't work out? Or we're dwelling on the past. I can't believe I did that thing. Oh, I'm so stupid. Everybody's thinking about that thing I said 20 years ago. And it's pulling us out of the present moment. Present is where our connection to ourself is most accessible. It's where information, really solid, beautiful information, clarity, guidance, all has a space and opportunity to drop in. So with the present card coming up, make time for your practices that allow you to be more present and whatever looks and feels good for you. I like to tell people, you know, to build their little spiritual toolkits. You know, maybe it's again meditation or journaling, breath work, yoga, walking, active presence, something I call active presence, which is just being really present to what you're doing, washing dishes, making your meal, whatever the case may be. But go in your toolkit and choose the tool that feels the most supportive and the most good, because the only tools that really matter are the ones that work for us, right? And do what you need to do to come back to the present moment, especially if you've been spiraling. Anybody who's listening and needs to hear that, come back to the present moment. We talked about this. The next card we have is clarity. And again, I love that these two would come up together right away because clarity exists in the present moment. But one thing that comes up with the clarity card in the guidebook that I love, and this deck is by Allison Felice, if anybody is interested in snagging this as their deck to start connecting with themselves, I think it's a great one. But she says that when we start asking everybody else for their opinion and what do you think I should do and things like that, it's like kicking up the mud at the bottom of a pond, and it makes the water all murky, and then we can't see clearly. And so we need to allow the mud to settle back to the bottom of the pond before the water is clear again, and we can find the clarity that we're looking for and what feels right for us. What do I actually want? And what feels correct for me. So this is making me so far feel like maybe people listening, or maybe you two are needing to make some sort of decision, you know, about something. What do I want to even be doing next, or whatever the case may be. The clarity that you're looking for exists within you. I know it's so fucking annoying to hear because we just want somebody to be like, this is what you're supposed to do, and this is your whole life purpose, and here's a roadmap on how to get there, and like toodaloo, have a great life. But that's just not how it works. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, we have to be willing to fuck around so that we can find out. So that's how you're gonna get your clarity. Come back to the present moment. Stop asking everybody else's opinion. They don't know. This is maybe one of my favorite cards in the deck. The next card we have is Cosmic Flow. And this is very much a challenge for those of us who are type A, and we're like, what flow? When does the flow start? When does the flow stop? Are there snacks on the flow? Like, this card is like wanting you to remember that the things that are meant for you will flow to you, and the things that are not will flow away. And that is very simple. Much of life is simple, but simple and easy aren't the same necessarily. Because what happens when what we want flows away, right? It's hard to reconcile when certain things aren't for us. But there's this level of relinquishing your grip or your grasp on life that comes up with this card. It says in the guidebook, a tight grip on life constricts the flow of energy. And so if you're feeling stuck or like a lot of stagnation in your life, you're probably gripping on to the way you think things should be, what you think is supposed to be happening, what other people should be doing, how you want other people to be perceiving you, which PS is so far out of your control. Okay. There's a different version of you in the minds of everyone, you know. I know that's terrifying, but you have to not try to control that. It would be impossible. You know, and so when we have this expectation for life and we're really gripping tight to that, and then reality does not meet that expectation, leads to frustration, unnecessary suffering ultimately, you know? So stop clinging to life, stop clinging to the riverbank, release your grip and allow yourself to flow. And this is where we also start cultivating trust with the universe, trusting, okay, bro, I'm releasing my grip. So, like, flow me to the ship that I'm supposed to have. Thank you. You know what I mean? I couldn't love more that this card would come up in a conversation about authenticity because I pulled the persona card. And this card is all about how, to some degree, we all wear masks, right? Like we have a self that we are when we're with our friends, and we have a self that we present when we're at work, and a self that we are with our families. And that's not even necessarily bad. I think that there are those, there's a time and a place to bring a certain version of ourselves to the table. However, it does become problematic when we lose sight of who we actually feel we are, who we are authentically underneath all of that, right? You know what? I actually am just going to share what comes up in the guidebook for this one because it feels so on the nose in a conversation about authenticity. So it says a persona is a mask we wear over our true essence. We have many, one for family, another for work. Over the years, we put on more and more to fit in and have our needs met. We can wear so many that we forget who we truly are. But we're so much bigger than the masks that we wear. These personas help us move through the world, so no need to throw them out. Just remember that behind it all, we are vast and timeless and perfect, here right on time and just as we should be. Give yourself time to step away from the world and reconnect to your true essence. So, like, come on, and especially coming up with this clarity card as well, which really tells us to go inward and also connect with what it is we actually want. It's not lost on me that the imagery on these cards is very similar, right? So there's a lot of this nudging, this encouragement to go inward and connect to self, be it your true identity, whatever that is, or your true desires, right? Whatever it is you want or want to be doing ultimately. Loving this next card that came up. So next we have the receive card. And I think that this is very interesting coming up in a reading with Cosmic Flow because this card actually talks about how receiving can be so hard for so many of us because when we're giving, we're in control. And when we're receiving, we're not always in control of what we're receiving, when we're receiving, how much we're receiving. So that feels so deeply uncomfortable for a lot of people. So it's kind of going back and echoing this message of releasing your grip and opening yourself up to receiving. And this is receiving information, receiving guidance, receiving clarity, right? Not gripping to what we think is supposed to happen or what we're supposed to be doing or any of that. And on a deeper, more kind of tender level, this receive card can, if we've got blocks around receiving, and I think a lot of people do, like if you're a kind of person that you go out to lunch with a friend and your friend's like, I got it, and you're like going to fight them to the death to pay your part of the bill, that's usually an indicator that you have a little bit of a problem receiving. That can be a deeper issue of worthiness or deservingness and indicate some blockage around the heart as well. And so, as I've already said multiple times, a lot of self-compassion and kindness and going inward and being willing to take a look at what's happening in the heart space. A great question to just ask when this card comes up is, what is my capacity to receive? And it might feel silly or seem silly because, like, on a conscious level, I think we're like, duh, I want all the shit that I want. I'm like open to receiving it all. Like I want everything I want right now. But when we have blocks around that, the good stuff starts showing up in our life and we're like, whoa, that feels unsafe. Like it feels unsafe in the body for some of us to start receiving a lot of the things that we want, especially after a season or perhaps a lifetime of scarcity or lack or disappointment. Good things showing up feels like I got to get rid of this because that doesn't feel right, you know? So that's another opportunity to go inward and sit with yourself and see what comes up. And one thing that I want to say, just outside of the reading and in general, on your journey of life and exploring authenticity, you need an abundance of curiosity to be a human being on this planet, I think. And I really think that curiosity is the remedy for judgment. When you're able to look at yourself and life through a lens of curiosity, it really softens those times when you want to be kicking your own ass. And if you can start going, that's so interesting. Like, I wonder why that's so activating, or what's going on here, what's coming up here. It's like a little doorway into learning yourself more deeply, connecting with yourself more deeply. So be curious, you know? Okay, let's see. Feeling another card or two. Okay, so the next card we have is the process. I think it's interesting that we've got the process and the present, because this is kind of like the present in another font. What comes up with this card is really like, sorry about the ice cream truck. That's that's going by.
I love
was
it.
like,
It adds a little
really
spice
right
to
now, a little whimsy, you know.
Yeah,
Yes.
present. It's not that serious.
I'm letting go of needing to control my environment.
Yeah.
So this process card is like, I know you just want to be there, right? Like, I know you've got the destination in your sights and you're like, God, I just want to be there. I want to be done with that. But life is so much more than getting from point A to point B. Life is everything that is happening in between those points, right? And why are we always in a rush? You know, you mentioned earlier feeling like you're late and, oh my God, time is running out. Like, so why are we rushing everywhere? Like, why are we not just giving ourselves full license to be immersed in the process and learn to enjoy it to the best of our ability? That's been so helpful for me as a person who just always wants to be at the destination. I don't ever want to have to practice. I don't want to wait. I'm very impatient. This is like my biggest life lesson. So learning how to be like really immersed in every step of what I'm doing helps me fall in love with my life so much more. And this applies to life in general, but like your goals, your pursuits, your creative projects, fall in love with each step of what you're doing to the best of your ability. The more you enjoy doing what you're doing, honestly, ironically, the quicker it goes then. And you look up and you're like, holy shit, I made it. I'm there, you know, instead of like, I'm not there yet. This is terrible. This is so annoying. I just want to be there. And remember that us humans, we're so fickle and temporary that we like get to our destination and we're like, woohoo, I made it. Now what? What's next? You know what I mean? Like, we're happy for 5 whole minutes until we're on to the next thing. So, you know, again, these two cards, the present and the process, are really, really trying to root you in the moment. You know what I mean? The last card that I have, I decided to look at the bottom of the deck and see what's going on here. And I think that this is beautiful because I feel collectively like a lot of people are kind of going through it right now. I've got the light and the dark card. And this is so interesting because I do have a weekly newsletter where I put out a reading every week. And the card that I pulled in the newsletter today was It Gets Better, which is such a similar vibe to this card. And I just want to remind you that everything is temporary. You know, we talked about this with that being in a difficult chapter or season of life and not needing to look for the lesson or whatever the case may be. But know that it's not going to last forever. And I know that's so hard to remember when we're in the thick of those moments that are really tough and feel, you know, challenging or painful even. But remember that even the deep, darkest, blackest fucking night of the soul always is going to have a dawn, right? So hang in there, you know, focus on putting one foot in front of the other. I know you're probably so annoyed with me being like, just enjoy every moment to the best of your ability. But, you know, what good can you find in what is happening right now? Because while one area of life might be totally shit, I bet that there's one thing that feels like this little light, in the dark for you. And how can you maybe shift your attention there? And again, just focus on putting one foot in front of the other until you look up and you're like, I made it. I'm out of that season. The sun has risen and I'm going to keep moving forward.
I need to go walk.
I was going to say, how are y'all feeling?
Speechless, blown away,
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
It's like finally scratching the itch of like just wanting to hear you talk more in the readings that I get through TikTok from you. And it's just like, yeah, especially having it be towards like our collective and having it feel so like resonating with the points that we're at right now.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. Thank you so, so much for that.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. I really feel like I couldn't have gone through this deck and handpicked better cards again for a conversation about authenticity, because this is what it requires, presence, the willingness to go inward, to listen to ourselves, to relinquish our need to grasp life and everything in life so tightly. To open up our hearts to even receive the things that we want. Because again, like I know we think we just want what we want. We're ready to have it all show up on our doorsteps tomorrow. But like, are you really? And it's all going to be okay. It always is. Things have a way of shaking out. Maybe not always how we hoped or planned. And again, so annoying, but often better than we could have ever realized they could be. It's hard when the universe's vision for our life is not quite what we thought our vision was going to be.
What I thought. It's not what I painted.
I don't know where you were hiding in my last therapy session, but you really just hit on everything I brought up. So I appreciate that. You're clearly the real deal. Can you let our listeners know where they can continue connecting with you after this episode, how they can get a reading with you, all of that good stuff? Because if they are not, I mean, I think all of our titties were blown off from that reading. So I think everyone is just going to be knocking down your door.
Whatever I had left, they're gone.
Wasn't much to begin with, but you know what? Mine's all gone. So here we are.
Just nipples. So I'm on TikTok at Asia Vines, which is AJA, V as in Victor, INES. That's the only social media I currently have. And my website, asiavines.com, is the best place to connect with me. As I mentioned, I do also have a free weekly newsletter if you just want to get a little taste of what it's like to be connected to me before moving forward with the reading. That's a great way to do so. I only send out emails on Tuesdays and like sometimes on a Friday, but I try to be really mindful about the amount of times I email people because Lord knows we get enough emails from everyone. So yeah, those would be the best places.